industry. We'll be starting the program in just a few moments, but first, some notes about today's program. Feel free to invite your friends to join in this show, and if you'd like to offer your thoughts on any of today's topics, you can request to join the stage and participate in the discussion, or comment in the chat in the video stream. You can find all of today's headlines on our website, musicindustrycity.com. Just head to the latest Music News at Noon post to see all the articles we referenced during today's broadcast. You can also register for free to get unlimited access to all the articles, news, and events in the city. And you may also watch us live on the video stream right from the website or on the Music Industry City YouTube channel. All right, is everybody ready? We begin our countdown right now.
Hello and welcome. It's great to be back. We had a week off, but it's great to have you on with us on this Monday. I'm Peter Schwing, and here's what's happening. Astroworld Festival deaths, responses, questions, and lawsuits. BandLab buys ReverbNation in artist service expansion. What's the Metaverse and what's in it for music? Zara Larsson passes $1 million of Roblox virtual merchandising sales, and Access Now steps up Spotify pressure over voice recognition. Those stories coming up, but first, let's take a look at this day in music history. And this day in history, we honor those who have passed, those who were born, and some interesting tidbits of what's happened in the business. So in this day, 1999, we lost American jazz trumpet player and composer Lester Bowie, died of liver cancer, aged 58. He was a member of the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians and co-founded the Art Ensemble of Chicago. In 1993, he played on the David Bowie album Black Tie, White Noise, which included the song Looking for Lester, which was named after him. And this also just was announced last night. Former UB40 vocalist Astro, whose real name is Terrence Wilson, has died after a short illness. He was 64 in memory. Born on this day, 1949, blues singer, songwriter, and slide guitarist Bonnie Raitt. 1958 brought us Terry Lee Meal from the English rock band Adam and the Ants. In November 1970, Rat guitar, Ned's Atomic Dustbin. Well, there's a name I haven't heard in a while. This day in history, 1952, the first ever UK pop chart was published by the New Musical Express after staff asked 53 record shops to divulge their sale returns. Here in My Heart by Al Martino was the first #1 song and stayed at #1 for 9 weeks. In November 8th, 2009, former Smiths frontman Morrissey stopped the concert halfway through his second song after being hit by a beer bottle. The 50-year-old singer at the time, who was hit in the eye by a plastic bottle of beer, said goodnight to the 8,000 crowd in Liverpool before walking off. And that does it for this day in history. To set the stage for a discussion, we provide informed perspectives and commentary on current headlines. If you'd like to offer your thoughts on one of today's topics, you can request to join the stage. I'd also like to say hi to everyone viewing our show in the video live stream on YouTube or directly from the Music Industry City website. To stay up to date on this and other programming, you can sign up at musicindustrycity.com for more news, articles, and events. And with that being said, let's get to it. And this is from Variety, and Astroworld Festival deaths included 2 children ages 14 and 16. So a lot of us have heard about this terrible tragedy that occurred over the weekend, and there's a lot going on. So what we're doing is we're going to we're going to be talking about like the main article and then some of the follow-up articles. If you actually go to Variety, there's I think about 6 or 8 articles on it. There's so some updates, and if anybody has some thoughts they want to chime in about, feel free to raise your hand as I'm doing the read. So this starts out like 300 were injured as crowds surged and stampeded during Travis Scott's set. Approximately 11 people suffered cardiac arrest at the show, said the mayor Turner. Although causes of death are still under review. 8 people died at the Astroworld Music Festival in Houston on Friday night, including 2 teenagers. The other victims were aged 21 to 27, according to Mayor Sylvester Turner. At 9:15 p.m., Travis Scott was performing at Energy Park when the crowd began to push toward the stage. Around 9:30 p.m., the first reports of injuries and falls came in. Then at 10:10 p.m., several fans were trampled in front of the stage. Around 50,000 people were in attendance at the time. Among the injured is a 10-year-old who is in critical condition, said Houston Police Chief Troy Finner. Goes on, Houston Mayor Turner said, this incident is being thoroughly investigated and reviewed. It is important for us to ascertain from last night what took place, what happened, where missteps have may occurred. Hidalgo said Live Nation, the promoter, had worked with Houston and Harris County officials on a site plan and a security plan prior to the event. Goes on to say, and so perhaps the plans were inadequate. Perhaps the plans were good, but they weren't followed. Perhaps it was something else entirely. Mayor Turner said that 528 Houston cops and 755 Live Nation security agents were on hand, 76 Houston police officers, 500 event security personnel, and 91 armed private security officers. Despite the venue security, the people were seen breaking an entry on social media, and Hidalgo said following the 2019 Astroworld Festival, more robust fencing and security were built. Continues that 25 people were taken to the hospital, including 11 who were in cardiac arrest, that the officials said at a press conference. 13 people remained hospitalized on Saturday afternoon, including 5 under the age of 18. 25 people were arrested, including 23 for trespassing, 1 for marijuana possession, and 1 for public intoxication. They said a field hospital at the stadium saw around 300 people. Travis Scott said in a statement on Saturday, quote, I'm absolutely devastated by what took place last night. My prayers go out to the families and all those impacted by what happened at the Astroworld Festival. This is now a criminal investigation that's going to involve our homicide division as well as narcotics, chief said, and we're going to get down to the bottom of it. Live Nation did cancel the second day of the festival. The company said in a statement, quote, heartbroken for those lost and impacted by at Astroworld last night. We will continue working to provide as much information and assistance as possible to the local authorities as they investigate the situation. Energy Park, which is operated by the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation, also issued a statement saying, we are deeply saddened by the heartbreaking loss of life and pain experienced by all those impacted by this tragedy. We are fully cooperating and working closely with police and local authorities as they investigated how this tragedy occurred at Astroworld Festival. So, going on with updates, and if anybody wants to offer any commentary, feel free to raise your hand and join the stage. Like I said, more of this, I'm just going to be kind of giving some just fact-based, some updates from the other articles as well. So the Houston mayor said Astroworld had more security than the World Series and promises thorough investigation. And then in continuing, they're talking about the issue here was some of the issues that what they did is that typically like a festival will have overlapping, if it's a headliner, they'll have overlapping stages to help spread out the crowd. This one, and this from the article, the fateful decision was having Scott go on 45 minutes later, as opposed to overlapping slightly with SZA's set or beginning just as it ended at 8 p.m. It's what live music professionals call spreading the field, and it's a key facet of crowd control at large-scale events like a music festival. For instance, at Bonnaroo, acts are spread out over 4 main stages and multiple smaller tents, and while the headliner undoubtedly draws the biggest crowd, the act doesn't go on as the only entertainment option for the slot, at least at the start. So this one also, they're saying that beginning at 8:30 p.m., there's a clock and was counting down. The clock hyped caused much of that running, eyewitnesses reported. They quote to say, the crux of the problem likely happened as the clock got close to zero. Now people are going to be asking who knew what was going on. Were they aware that there was an ambulance car on the floor, and why didn't they stop the set? And that's the biggest question that is also happening, is why it also took 37 minutes and I'll go more into this here, why it took 37 minutes from the casualty call to stopping the set. Travis Scott just as a side note, said he was going to refund all Astroworld attendees. He canceled his day in Vegas festival appearance. And according to the Houston Chronicle, police and firefighters declared a mass casualty event at 9:38 p.m., 32 minutes after Scott's set began, when crowd surges reportedly started. The paper reported that promoters agreed to find a way to cut the concert short soon after the 9:38 casualty report, but that the show continued until Scott ran through his planned set list and finished at scheduled 10:15 p.m. So to go on the lines here is AEG's, the corporate parent of Golden Voice, which is the festival promoters. And it goes on. There were some people from Variety. Again, Variety has a lot of articles. They had one of the staffers was at the festival, was talking about, again, the countdown clock counting down and causing the crowd to surge. And here's some reports from festival goers. They said it was when it started to get crazy. It was a mess. An insider working the show told Variety, adding that Scott encouraged the audience to rage, and that's when things took a dark turn. When headlining is set, all the mosh pits opened up and it caused a domino effect. It really got crowded and people were falling. About 2 to 3 songs in, started to get violent. We were in the middle of the field and there was no room to move. So they said, though, that Scott paused the show and asked for calm on several occasions and even noted that an ambulance was in the crowd. While video shows him speaking with staffers during the set, presumably about the uproar in the crowd, he continued with the set. And in one video posted online, Scott is seen telling the crowd, quote, "I want to see some rages. Who wants to rage?" But shortly after, he says, quote, "There's an ambulance in the crowd. Whoa, whoa, whoa." They also say Travis Scott, he took pauses to point out to the crowd to, like, go help them. They're passed out. And that's what a concert goer, Angel Rodriguez, told the New York Times. He did it like 3 times. He pointed to the area where it was and said for everybody in the area to go help them and bring them back to the front. So their lawsuits are already being filed, and we're going to just wrap up on this shortly. And again, if anybody has some comments, feel free to raise your hand. We can talk about this. So the first filings came not long after the Houston Chronicle published an article which prominent local attorneys predicted an influx of lawsuits asking for hundreds of millions of dollars and in damages from the 8 deaths and injuries reported from Friday's concert. Houston resident Manuel Souza filed suit Saturday in the District Court of Houston against festival founder and headline Travis Scott, promoter ReverbNation, individuals affiliated with Energy Park and Score More Holdings, and several other defendants. The suit describes Souza as injured without going into the nature of the extent of the injuries. It also includes a screenshot of a tweet on Scott's Twitter account, which allegedly in response to a complaint about the festival's quick sellout, Scott is seen in writing, "No, we will still sneaking the wild one in." A comment that had nearly 100,000 likes at the time and was captured. And he goes on to say this recklessly encouraged fans to breach the barriers and otherwise actively encourage a culture of violence. The filing also includes screenshots taken from widely publicized videos taken Friday afternoon and fans rushing through broken down security barricades to gain free entry into the grounds. It's a terrible tragedy. And we're going to be hearing a lot more roll out this. And if anybody has some comments or has anybody worked in live music and wants to on a festival or anything, would like to jump up, yeah, let's bring in Ted on up. I mean, this goes back to, we look at going back in the history. We had Pearl Jam at Roskilde. We have the Who at Cincinnati, which changed concerts, how concerts were done forever. Ted, how are you?
Very good, Peter. How are you today?
Good.
I'm basically throwing a question back to you. What do you feel? I mean, I was tangentially involved in the Cincinnati thing in that I was supposed to be there, and the people who were running it were people that I had recommended to Electric Factory at the time, who were running Riverfront concerts. And but for the grace of God, I would have been there that night in Cincinnati. It was a horrible night. But what do you believe is the crowd's responsibility? I mean, everybody's quick to sue everybody else, but where does personal responsibility fall into this? What do you think?
Well, it's a very good and very difficult question because you look at there's boundaries, and the goal is for a festival to set up barriers. I mean, this is what they learned from. I mean, the Cincinnati was like a lot of errors going into play. I mean, there was a lot of factors. It wasn't just one thing. It was the Who was doing a sound check.
They held up sound check. They held the doors. It was
so there was a lot there.
People were pressed against the glass. All there was a big learning curve from that.
Right.
But there's also, I went to Outside Lands a few years ago where I watched a coordinated effort by an outside crowd to take, to bring the fence down.
Hmm.
Basically, to get in for free. I worked on Woodstock 99. I
Yeah.
worked on Woodstock 94. And at a certain point, the same people that may be suing right now are the same people that, that inflame, I won't say
Hmm.
cause, but inflame the situation. So I'm really conflicted here about, it's almost, if you sign to come in, you sign a certain, code of conduct, and you also say shit happens. I know between the promoters and the security people they use, all this was thought about, but who can anticipate that that it's going to go that nuts? You can't.
Hmm. I
That
mean, yeah,
said, I still, my question was to you of how do you feel about it? Everybody is quick to hire a lawyer and file a
yeah.
lawsuit. I think there's some inward looking here at this point.
I mean, we are looking. Yeah, I mean, it's like you going into a mosh pit and then coming out like, oh, I was in a mosh pit and I got elbowed and I have a broken nose now and I'm going to sue. I mean, that's responsibility of you. You are entering into this mosh pit knowing that's this. But there are questions of saying, yes, there is responsibility, it's personal responsibility. But on top of that, it's I look at it saying like, what were the barricades? What they have special ways of like, here's how much you corral. What influence? Now, again, it is personal responsibility, but at what point does it go beyond that where it is on the event side? Like, were certain barriers not, or should they have stopped it sooner? Things like that. When was it noticed? But this is one thing that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out here, and this was not mentioned in most of the articles, and that was that Travis Scott stopped and said, "Hey, we got to take care of somebody here." So, at what point do you completely stop the show and say, "Hey, listen, we need to come together and just hold on"? Because I've been at shows where, I've been at a Dead show where the fences have come down, and I've watched 5,000 people run in, no issues. I've been at a Pearl Jam show where Eddie Vedder said, stop, or we're walking off the stage right now." We've seen the Dave Grohl one, that video. So, at what point? It's a tough line because it's a balance between a personal responsibility as a festival goer or a concert going, but also as the promoter, as the performer. But also when you're performing, you're in a different world on stage. It's hard to make these decisions. Like you're like, what's going on, and you're in the middle of a song. You're like, what do I do? I've been on stage when there's a fight that's broken out. And we're like, we didn't know what to do, and the sound guys like, keep going.
But there's been, you get into this thing that we're living through right now of cognitive dissonance,
Hmm.
where you watch something, I watch something, we watch a video of something, and you have a completely different visceral reaction
Yeah.
than I did. I watched the Woodstock 99 documentary where you see John Scher continuing to say to the Chili Peppers guys, to I forget who the Limp Bizkit, to what's his name, uh, the lead singer of Limp Bizkit, please
Yeah,
calm
Fred
the
Durst.
crowd down. Please
Yeah.
calm the crowd down. And they proceeded to go out and basically amp the crowd up, saying it's not our job to calm the crowd down. And then when everything went to shit, it was, well, the promoter didn't deal with it well. I mean, there's a certain point where the bands have responsibility. If Travis Scott jumped in, I haven't seen that footage, but if he jumped in and said, "Hey, let's cool it. We need to deal with a problem here right now," that's really great. That's really responsible. I did watch what happened at Woodstock 99, where basically the artist, exhorted the crowd to
Hmm.
basically burn the place down. And then everybody's going, how? How could that possibly happen?
Exactly, and that's a great point. I mean, it's that goes back to that. Hey, everybody, look at this video, and do you happen to see the gorilla walk out into the middle of the stage or something like that? And you know, 10% of the people saw the gorilla walk out onto the stage because they were told to be looking at something else, and nobody paid attention. So you can look at something, and yeah, the cognitive dissonance, and it's very interesting. Ted, I also want to get Joseph and Judan. They wanted to come up. They want asked to come up, so I want to get them into the conversation. Let's keep this going, Joseph. Joseph, you there? Can't hear you, Joseph. Judan?
Hey, Peter. As you know, I have about 20 odd years experience working at venues, and I have seen people rush the gates and the promoters panic because specifically of Cleveland, and say just open the gates and let them in. And it worked out fairly well because they were just eager to get to the stage. I've also seen riots in here in Philadelphia, and I have seen sold out shows where we know how many people are in the building, and I still go into the arena and see no less than 5 first level sections completely devoid of humanity because everybody has pushed forward either onto the floor or into the closer sections on the first level. There's a responsibility, yes, on the part of the artist to understand the intrinsic relationship that they have with their fans. There is, yes, a responsibility of the fans to act appropriately, but there's a certain mentality that flips in when you're in mass that you don't always act on your best impulses. And that's where the quote unquote dispassionate presence of the promoter, of security, and of the venue have to act, have to have things in place already, anticipating that lack of, for lack of a better term, control on the part of the fan, and the fact that the artists might not be able to notice every hot pocket that is out there. So this is why it's not something that can be anticipated except for in risk management. It's something that you always have to be aware of and know what the circumstances are that are going to ignite in various situations.
It's so a couple quick things. Somebody on our live streaming feed, it's like there's footage which you can clearly see cams zip lining over the audience. So there was a lot going on there. Travis's wife posted videos of the ambulance as it went by. So so there's all this different footage we're going to start seeing. I'm sure they're going to be collecting a lot of footage. They're going to be scouring that. Here's one question though. Something's happening, it's going on, and you stop the show. What can happen there? It's like, hey, everybody, chill out. We got to stop. Now, this is a scary moment. If they stop the show, does a riot break out? Because you already have the adrenaline, you already have the energy, you already have the Kindle is lit. And you're looking at it, are you sitting on a powder keg saying, hey, we have to stop the show? Does it get worse from there? That is a question that the promoters and the people have to ask. If we stop the show, is a riot going to break out?
But it also, I would think, depends on the condition of how the show is stopped. I would believe that inside an arena where it's dark, you flip on the lights, people are shocked into stopping what they're doing. An outside festival, that's not easy to accomplish or even possible to accomplish. It has to be something that kind of jolts them out of the mindset that they're in.
The other thing, Peter, is, and I don't know if we'll ever get there, is the mindset when this happens. How do we de-escalate the situation, or how do I make a statement that avoids me being involved in the lawsuit that's going to follow? I mean, what is the motivation? Is it from saving lives and keeping people safe, or is it avoiding culpability?
It's a great question. It's like that you pay people a lot of money for that to can you write a statement for me? It's a great question. I want to get Joseph. I know Joseph was unmuting at the same time. So Joseph, what are your thoughts?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. What I wanted to touch on was, with everything that Judan was saying, a lot of those, everything she was saying is 100% correct. However, with previous events, previous Live Nation events that Travis Scott has performed with other festivals pertaining to Governor's Ball, Rolling Loud, speaking from being on the grounds and being involved with the Rolling Loud Festival prior to 2021. anytime that Travis Scott performed, from the second Rolling Loud that he performed at, they his audience, they broke, the barricades got broken. He's got a very very powerful audience, to say the least. But on top of it, we learned back in 2018, Rolling Loud Miami, when Travis performed, we learned that the layout for the crowd management, it was we had to do better, and the reason being was because of the fact of, at that specific event, there was golf carts that got stolen, that got driven through the audience. It was the same layout. I got aerial view shots of the actual event from this past weekend, and it's the same layout, pretty much, of the crowd control position from barricades as it was in Rolling Loud Miami. And we had to learn from that. And, Live Nation was involved in that event too. Whereas that was, Rolling Loud 2018, that was 80,000 people. And then going into New York, when we did Rolling Loud New York, which was to follow in 2018, we learned from the layout in Miami that we were going to have to do a better layout for the crowd management, which actually broke those sections out even more. The fact that you just had an X and you had, we'll just call it 4 boxes of, crowd members. You think about the power behind 50,000 people. That section of barricade is not going to hold back 50,000 people, and especially when they're cramming in there. There's too much force. Whereas if you were to take that 4 sections and broke it out into 8, which is, I think it was 8 or 12 in New York, there was a lot less force in those areas. The layout, they should, people may give me some heat for saying this, but we've already seen this. Like me personally, and everybody who's on those grounds in 2018, we already saw this layout. We saw and we learned from it, and we did it better in New York. Whereas at the end of New York, we were kind of like, "Yep, that worked out great. It worked out great. There was no injuries. The force between each section was extremely lessened. Whereas prior to that, the force was just uncontrollable."
Right. Exactly.
So,
and that's on the festival owner. What they were saying about this is learning from the last time they got better barricades and everything, and they still came down. But that happens. I mean, again, what's the response? Right. Going back to Ted's original question, what is the responsibility of the crowd themselves? I mean, you can only hold back so much.
But the crowd is going to do what the crowd is going to do. And, especially with an artist like Travis Scott, you have. I was just having this conversation. You have his audience is not like other audiences. When his audience moves, they move together. It's like taking 1,000 people carrying a battering ram and moving at the same time to bust down a door. It's similar because that audience moves together. Whereas at other festivals, everybody's all over the place. It's not a continuous in sync motion.
So let me play devil's advocate. And I think this kind of goes back a little, it kind of ties in with Ted. And I also want to get Jody's thoughts on this as well, as somebody that does, public events and everything. The thing is, okay, so if knowing that Travis's audience is a certain way, okay, so knowing that Travis's audience is a certain way, and they go back to the one point where most festivals, and you talked about this, it's spread out. Most festivals, their headliner is not the only act that's on. The other stages are still going, so they can spread out the acts. Okay, so they can spread out the audience. Now, what they were saying for this is... Yeah, so what they were doing is hyping. They were doing the hype, the countdown clock. Everybody get to this stage. There was nothing else going on. Now, does this become, so going back to Ted, how much is the crowd responsibility and how much then is responsibility on the event producers, the teams that are putting this all together. So, that kind of dials back into Ted's question, I guess.
Well, when to kind of go back, I'm going to go back a little bit to what you were saying earlier, Peter, about there's nobody really kind of reporting the video footage of Travis stopping to get the person out of that situation, and afterwards, that was only one person. I don't know if Travis, we don't know if Travis was wearing in-ears. We don't know if there was crowd mics. We don't know if, he couldn't see because he was being blinded by spotlights. You don't,
Right. Yeah.
when you're being hit with spotlights, you're seeing a very cloudy effect. You may see tons of cameras and stuff like that are up in the air. But when you're being hit with a spotlight, you're a deer in headlights at that point.
You can't see. No.
Exactly.
You can't really see the audience.
See. However, the one thing that I noticed in what people are also reporting, and I'm seeing, is the fact of, he did acknowledge that person and, stopped for a minute to get them out. However, once they got that person out, he made a remark that people are, they are, it's embedded in their head, which is, him turning around to the entire audience stating, he wants to feel the whole ground shake.
Right.
Stuff like that, just stuff like that is going to trigger.
Right on. Thanks.
But as far as being able to turn around, when you have Travis, they're there to see Travis, right?
Mm-hmm.
He should have been notified by his team what was going on prior. This happened.
That's the breakdown. That's what their breakdown is, and that's what I want to get to. I want to get over to Jody because I also have to wrap up the show. But
real quick, let me just finish. Let me finish my thought here. He should have been notified, and they should have been like, "There's issues out there. You need to stop. Right now, let everybody stop. This is what's going on out there." I think that would have helped out tremendously. But there's a lot of unanswered questions on, people are saying there was a serial killer there, injecting people. There's so many different variables that at this point, it's a waiting game to find out.
We're going to hear more and more. Yeah. So I just had somebody in the chat here, and I just want to get over to Jody, and then because we do have to wrap up in just a few minutes. Magazine was saying in the chat here, there's footage of two staff coming onto stage to tell Travis that something was up, and there's other footage. And what we're going to hear more about, I think the focus is going to be on, is this, declaring a mass casualty event at 9:38 p.m., which was 32 minutes after his set began. And then, why did he go through this planned set list and finish at 10:15? I think that's going to be the question. Jody, I want to just get your thoughts really quick as we start beginning to wrap up in the next few minutes.
Yeah, so, I was actually on a Clubhouse forum yesterday talking about this too. With public events, and with any festival or large-scale event, it really is the responsibility of the venue as well as the event producer to do an extensive risk assessment to foresee any potential risk that might happen and how to mitigate the potential, how to mitigate and reduce the potential for bodily harm. And you have to go through every potential scenario in order to figure out what the solution would be before the event even starts. So, Live Nation running and owning that venue, it's like, I know a lot of conversation is happening around Travis Scott, but it's like, it really is also their liability because they're the ones that own the venue. So if they are agreeing to have this event being produced by Travis Scott at their venue, then they should have been doing all the risk assessments associated with it, so that way they could make sure that producer was prepared for all potential risks. And it's a real shame that this has happened. I was part of a festival over Labor Day weekend, large scale festival. 9 stages. And the thing that I noticed was that because all of the professional event people have been off for 18 months. It was like it was like trying to start up a rusty wheel. There was a lot of stuff that they were missing because they were out of practice, and things that we're used to doing, like that are second nature for us, that like things that I would normally spot quickly
Right.
was it's like trying to start up a rusty
Right.
rusty
Yeah. I
car
mean,
again. So
yeah. So it's a lot. There's a lot going on because I do have to wrap up. Thank you, Jody, and thank you, everybody. I do want to clarify a couple things here. Hold on a second, Ted. Because there's so much speculation going on, and I mean, even new media is just misreported. I was just informed that I said, according to the Houston Chronicle, they said that Scott ran through his planned set list and finished at the scheduled 10:15 p.m. I was just informed, Chris, thank you so much, that he did not finish his set list. So again, even through media, where there's going to be there's conflicting reports, and we don't want to speculate and jump to conclusions. There's a lot of things that are going to we're going to hear more and more about over time, and like, because you have like Live Nation, you have AG. It's like and the park is which is operated by the Harris NRG Park is operated by the Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation. So they've also issued a statement as well. So you just want to make sure we be as clear as like who are the parties involved, what's going on, and without speculation. So Ted, we're going to wrap up. I want to give this just about 4 more minutes because we got to close out the show.
I'm going to give it a 30-second question. It seems to me that the challenge that has been expressed just in the last few minutes is, do you treat your audience like they are animals, or do you treat them like they're adults, or is there a slider in between that? Because at one hand, I'm hearing, well, we should be ready for anything because once they get in there, they're maniacs. And on the other hand, if security and the promoter and everybody along the line and the police are treating everybody as if they're, quote, animals, they're going to act like that. So how do we strike a balance? It's something to think about, to discuss tomorrow.
Chris,
Actually,
I want to Joseph. Can I get Chris to? Chris just jumped in. We got to wrap, so I want to let Chris have a say.
I disagree with whatever Chris says.
I love you, anyways, Ted. So first off, this is not a Live Nation owned property. This is a county owned property. So let's make sure we're clearly stating what's going on here. Number two is the police chief was involved, we're finding out, in making the decision of an abrupt stop being even more problematic. They were still dealing with the situation the best they could behind the scenes without what they felt could have possibly made it worse. He did not complete the entire time. It went even shorter than you're thinking, you know what I mean? So the teams were talking. It does take time for that communication to happen. I believe, without speculating, what we're going to find is that this is going to be a cumulative event that caused this through several different things, not one instance. Ted, to your point, we know about crowd frenzy. We've seen it all the way back to the Beatles. It is a fact. Whether or not you want to use the terminology animals, I don't know about that. But you could have a smart, intelligent human being. You could put a group of them together. They're easily a scared, dangerous mob. So that being said, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of false bullshit being put out there. We need to slow down. There's going to be a lot of lawsuits. As far as insurance and everything goes, of course they had to submit a feasibility report. Of course it had to pass fire marshal, insurance. All of them had to look at it and approve it to provide this insurance waiver, to provide the capacity permit. All of those burdens had to have been met. There were fire marshals on scene because of the amount of pyro. There were police on scene. So everybody needs to, before they start pointing fingers because they saw 30 seconds on TikTok and think they know what happened, slow down, let the people do their work, and then we'll find out.
And I think that is where we close out. Thank you, Chris. I mean, it's really important that we aren't all jumping conclusions and looking at, if we're reading media, I mean, even I was just pointed out, the Houston Chronicle reported something that was incorrect. And, then thank you, Chris, for correcting that. I mean, these are the type of things. So, and as Ted was talking about earlier, you look at a video, two people can look at the same video in a different way. So let's not jump to conclusions. Let's see what this rolls out. And like Chris said, yeah, there are going to be a lot of investigations into this. We don't like seeing this happen. I mean, this goes back to Pearl Jam, Roadkill. We see, I mean, and even further back, and it's like Chris said, goes back to the Beatles, the Who, things like that, Indianapolis. So these are things that we want to, hopefully can still do our best to prevent in the future.
Hey, Ted, 2 seconds. Listen, when people perpetuate false information, it's more damaging to the industry than this tragedy already is. The truth is bad enough. Don't sensationalize it and add to it with, ancillary bullshit. The truth is bad enough.
Right on.
I'm not adding anything to it, Chris.
I didn't say you were, Ted.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought
I'm speaking as a generalism to all
I totally
people.
agree. I totally agree. But, having watched the whole Woodstock thing from backstage in '99 and having been a few other things, you are in the middle of a thing of, do you treat people like responsible adults? Do you treat them like they're a powder keg? And I know there's something in between that we have to figure out going forward what that is.
Right on. All right.
I think in the history of man, we haven't figured that out, and it'll be hard to.
That's a whole different discussion. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for a great discussion. Chris, I wish you were in earlier because some of the points you were bringing up, we were touching upon earlier, and it would have been great to have you in that point. But yeah, this is really important. And again, let's not spread all the speculation. Let's wait to see what comes out. Let's stick to the facts here. So thank you, everybody. It's great to be back on this Monday, and we will see you again tomorrow.